Oh my God.
Well, call this finance meeting to order. I want to thank everybody taking part in this year's budget meetings and whatever. We aren't in a great position looking forward, but we're in a great position at the moment. And that's why we're able to get the budget to where it finally has arrived in this we've had some good discussions about how we want to look at things going forward, and we've had that in the past. But I think when the new year starts, we'll want to start early. It wasn't until June that I actually realized and went and saw the treasurer and said, hey, our financials are great, but this is not good. And we've kind of gone from there to where we are today. So that's kind of where the whole message is coming from. Barb Birch did the cover for us. That's where we don't want to be. We don't want to have our roads and bridges be a disaster, but yet every year, we have to fight in order to get enough money in there to do the work. And so that's kind of where the whole story. So hello to all my colleagues, citizens, department heads, and taxpayers in Washington County. I want to thank everyone that helped in getting this budget to this point. In 2010, I put together a budget for 2011. It was the most challenging of times. It was a financial crisis like we had not experienced, and our decline in sales tax and increased pension costs made for extreme cuts, and everyone understood the how and why of what was at hand. This year is very different. Our financials are very strong, but we are trending in uncharted water where state mandates are crippling our rural communities as state and federal agencies are spending at levels that are not sustainable. We cannot do the same. With the closing of Great Meadow Correctional Facility, we are left with many unknowns in our future. What would even make us consider that we will be in a better position next year at this time? In June, I let the Board of Supervisors know that the decisions made in last year's state budget had us in a projected expense pattern that wouldn't be beneficial to our county. And we still don't know completely how bad the effect will be on Washington County on the budget that was passed in Albany for our current year. Our biggest budgetary trends that we have very little control over are the costs of pensions, health insurance, and mandated social services. Foster care, child education, and homeless are the major cost escalators. Over $3 million increase of net cost to Washington County for 2025. This year's challenges have a lot to do with inflation. 3 years ago, we methodically made it a point to raise wages for retention and attracting new employees. It was necessary that we made those decisions. Today, we are now under the pressure of increasing health and pension costs. We know that our employees are our greatest asset. However, we must keep in mind the taxpayers we represent. Looking at a $150 million budget for a small rural county is hard to fathom on the surface. New York State does mandate nearly 90% of that. That is what we must work around. Our countywide assessed value is up 10.26% in the past year. So let's look at sales tax revenue of $30 million. Now put in perspective, that means that our taxable purchases in Washington County of $1 billion. Think about that for a minute. The first dozen years I was on board, we had sales tax revenue based on purchases of only $500 to $700 million. In the past 5 years, internet sales and inflation have made us the beneficiary of a $10 million increase in sales tax. So inflation is really on both sides of the balance sheet. Every year we have joint meetings with Finance Committee and each departmental committee. This year was just more of what has become the norm. In each meeting, it was how prices escalated everywhere and how do we make that fit our budget. Until our last finance meeting, the discussion in the room was overriding the 2% tax cap, increasing sales tax to 8%, and preserving fund balance. Our newest supervisor asked, "Do you expect it to get any better next year or the year after?" My answer is no. I believe the state and federal governments have borrowed too much money to believe it would be better or that they can do anything different than pass on mandates to the county level. At that point, the discussion changed. How do we go to our taxpayers that are still feeling the pressure of out of control inflation and interest rates, asking they pay more tax of any kind unless we get serious about actual cuts, just like areas that are from areas that are not mandated. DPW and Sheriff Patrol are our main expense that are not mandated. In 2010, we were forced to go in that direction. We paved around 5 miles of road that year. A normal year is nearly around 25 miles. So now 15 years later, barely back on track for what is necessary to keep our roads and bridges safe. I'm not sure we want to go in that direction quite yet. The reason is quite clear. Again, the taxpayer. The hardworking taxpayers are on our roads every day to get to and from work. Our elderly need to travel for groceries and appointments. Economic development is only possible with strong infrastructure, and that begins with our roads and bridges. Deb Donahue is a tough leader in DPW and has a good handle on how to make things work in her world. Though seeing me trying to remove more money from her budget didn't make me popular, we were able to cut the amount of money being transferred from the general fund to county road and county road machinery to reach a number that helped get us to an amount of appropriated general fund monies that make this budget more palatable and may give us an opportunity to actually not spend what is appropriated. Appropriated funds from county road fund balance made this possible. So to make a long story short, Deb's ability to save money on work we have approved is there and available to make this possible. The cover of the budget message is really what we're trying to avoid. It may come to more cutbacks in the next couple of years, but this plan is a valid attempt to keep Washington County open for business. There's a real chance we can't avoid delaying bridges and roads soon, but for now we can keep up the pace. The Sheriff Patrol is the other non-mandated area where we could actually cut. Again, I ask about our taxpayer. The county is receiving revenue from 2 villages that have cut their village police departments, and there are 2 more that could go that route real soon. I've had plenty of lengthy discussions with sheriff, probation, alternative sentencing, and the district attorney. The alarming number of opioids that are being transported through our county and the number of calls because of drug overdose being handled by our public safety are not acceptable. This is a quality of life issue that we can't allow to get out of control. We should all be looking for efficiencies in every department, but we can't afford to lose this war on drugs. The budgetary cut that was asked for in our last finance meeting is not happening because of the situation in the sheriff's staffing. It takes time and money to train new recruits. So yes, the revenue from Whitehall and Fort Edward help us grow the department as village PDs are becoming an economic strain to those villages. So it isn't a savings in the budget as is presented, but it is a savings in our actual spending because we have not had the ability to train and hire staff to replace the amount that retire or transfer away from our county. Again, the taxpayer wants to be protected from criminal behavior and ensure their quality of life continues. My biggest concern comes from an analysis of DSS. Mandates are an issue here. Not sure what we can control, if anything. We're also going to be interviewing candidates this coming year as our DSS Commissioner, Tammy DeLorme, has announced that she will retire in August. Tammy has done a phenomenal job in this position for many years and has seen major changes in her department in her tenure. In 2020, the actual expense were around 19 million. And this year's budget expense is around 30 million. That equates to a net cost increase of $3 million over the same period. I'm sure there's a need for assistance. I'm not willing to accept the enabling of a group of people to be less than their potential, but state and federal mandates have led to this situation. I'm in hopes that this will be looked at by state and federal legislators. It was brought up in our finance meeting that we need to look at carpool in general. The leadership is great. Where we have fleet cars might actually be a detriment to efficiency. We hope we make it a priority with everyone working together to decrease the number of cars if possible. Car prices are quite high as is maintenance, and if we had less of them, we could decrease costs. Paying mileage might even be more cost effective where it is allowed. We have discussed in the past that when CHPE line is up and running, we will get pilot money that would change our financial situation. That will involve overriding the 2% tax cap at that point to take advantage of the situation. That will evolve at its own pace, and we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. This is a highway themed budget from the cover to the message, the content side. I really didn't want to decrease the interfund transfer to county road to below this year's amount. I also would rather it was not necessary to budget interfund transfer money at all to county road. I'm in hopes that we can convert over time the amount from road machinery to county road, and that would slow our expenses in the general fund. In the big picture, our county DPW has had the most inflow of money ever. It was well overdue. 2 new highway garages in Fort Ann and Middle Falls would not have been possible without funds from the federal ARPA program as a result of COVID-19. I can't thank the Board of Supervisors enough for their diligence in spending that money. That was the best way to get a return for our taxpayers. The new year will bring new challenges, new opportunities, and I'm sure mandates to contend with. Keeping with the cover page theme, this is how we plan to bridge the gap so we can avoid that cover being our future. So with that, I present to you the tentative 2025 budget, over 3.8 million of appropriated fund balance and a 2.43% tax increase. After it went to print, I realized that one amount is missing and I expect it to be around 40,000 for taxes on county property. That expense may need to be covered by fund balance. There may be other amendments that are also necessary. Our county clerk has done a great job in reconfiguring her department and finding revenues as well as cutting expenses. With what comes in need in the new year to cut a full-time position to part-time when a current employee retires that is all trained and like to come back and work for us with less benefit expense. The traveling DMV will also have some changes that I will let her explain in her committee that I believe make total sense. Information technology has certainly seen changes over the years. We are reaping benefits, but with that comes a cost in how our vendors do business. Maintenance contracts alone total over $1 million in our 2026 budget. We know that now. Working with Terry McNaughton, the department has helped us immensely with shifting costs and making timely purchases according to our circumstances. Anything pulled from her budget at this point are things that she didn't need, things done this year that was money to do, or that she had money to do. And the last group to come out will require a budget amendment from this year by spending $109,000 in this year's budget from our contingency to withdraw for the amount of next year's budget that we can do now. Nearly 300,000 in savings came from changes in how they make that process happen, and that is much appreciated. The following pages of reports summarize history within the budget process. I think you'll find them informative. At this time, I wish to thank all of our department heads for the fine work they do and the changes they have to make to get through the budget process. I wish to thank the Board of Supervisors for working through the joint meetings and sometimes contentious discussions. We are all in search of efficiencies. I want to thank the staff of the Board of Supervisors, staff of the county administrator for their patience and effort. You're all aware that I don't do this entirely alone. Melissa Fitch and Amalette see way too much of me this time of the year. I'm grateful for their time, effort, and ability to make a team approach to move in one direction. I sincerely thank both of them. I thank all of you for your attendance at the budget presentation. So I think from where we were with $6.9 million in requests that would showed up on the appropriated fund balance, getting that down to 3.8, I think is significant. We actually didn't go quite to the total of the cap because while we were working on it at the same time, sewer district has to be figured in because they're a percentage of our cap. So 253 was actually what we could have went. We're at 2.43. So there's $1,000 right now. So any amendments that you want to make under the cap, you're either using fund balance or up to $20,000. better than I thought we could get when I started. Yeah, I don't know that we're on a great pace for next year though at the moment. I mean, there's already things built in that probably exceed what our tax cap is for next year. So that's why we're gonna have to be very serious in how we look at hiring and the efficiencies in the different programs. Forward to that. Thank you, everyone. We're adjourned.